Welcome, traveler from distant lands and realms. I'm going to be talking about two things sort of as one, and this topic is writing openings as well as editing and the pitfalls of editing too much. If you wait till the end, I'm also going to be reading out a part of my story that I think you might enjoy, just a snippet or random moment that might put you in the scene and gives you a taste of what I can do. The story that I'm trying to finish currently was one that I started when I was about 12 years old. I was never one to really struggle with openings. I would always find a way to just jump into the writing, find a good moment, not really think about it. However, something that I started doing was questioning myself. I started thinking a lot about how I wanted to open these stories, what I wanted to show. Something that I really wanted to make sure was that the writing was the best. I'm going to show you my evolution of this, and hopefully you can gain some information, you can see a bit about my story, and I can talk about that. We're going to jump in right at the beginning, where I'm going to be talking about and reading from the very first handwritten novel that I wrote. When I was small, I would sit in bed before going to sleep and write as much as I could. It was, for me, the most incredible thing to do. So I'm going to read from what I wrote when I was about 12 years old. Each part I'm only going to be reading about a few paragraphs just to give you a taster of how things have changed. Now this is going to be really cringy. I don't know if you've ever reread writing when you were younger, but it's painful, so bear with me while I try not dying inside. Luxon! Luxon! Come, it's time to eat, said Luxon's mother. Where does he go off to? She said to herself. There little Luxon came running back, holding a little wooden sword he had made. Back into the village he ran. It was a small village. The sun shone as he ran to his house. It was a small one, as his family were not very rich. He opened the door and came in, out of breath. Where have you been? Said the mother in an angry voice. I've been in the woods fighting dragons and trolls. The mother smiled and turned to cook. Luxon was 10 years old. He was quite a strong boy for his age, big and sturdy. His blonde hair was messy as he'd just been playing. The young boy placed his wooden sword by the door and climbed his chair, waiting for his food. The table was only laid for two, the mother and Luxon. The father went out hunting one day and was surprised by a pack of wolves. Sadly, he was killed. The mother walked to the table holding a pot. Hold out your bowl, she said, and Luxon did so. With a spoon, she dished out oats. Oats? We've been eating oats for a week now, and I'm getting sick of them, he said, crossing his arms. I'm sorry, but this is the only thing that we can buy. Frowning to himself, he ate it slowly. But little Luxon did not know that they were so poor. Soon the young one said, I cannot eat another bite. I shall go to bed. And he left the table. The next morning came. In this village, not much happened apart from silly festivals, which meant nothing. Most of the people in this village were bad-tempered or stupid. But today something was going to happen, which was going to change little Luxon's life. There's a festival that happens afterwards, and a fortune teller tells Luxon that he's destined for great things, upon which he leaves his village and decides to chase his fate. So that was the first opening. The next part is when I typed out what I'd handwritten. So some small changes, but we'll see again how it evolves. Luxon, Luxon, come home, it's time to eat, cried Luxon's mother. Where does that boy go to? Luxon Colrin was 10 years old. He was a sturdy boy and strong for his age. Luxon had golden blonde hair that he left to wave in the wind and dark brown eyes that were the color of a soft tree. He lived in a village called Durl. This village was a poor kind where villagers would be forced to work hard labor to feed themselves and their families. It was a peasant village. As some might have said, this place was worse than a cursed dungeon, forever bound to their torturing work. But despite this horrible home, a beautiful forest surrounded it. This forest was called the Grey Forest, a beautiful lush wood where few harmful creatures roamed. Durl was near the centre of the forest, but not in the heart of the Grey Forest, as it was called. The Grey Forest was one of the biggest forests in the continent. Not too far from the village, through the trees, Luxon heard the call of his mother. He turned and set off home, clutching the wooden sword tightly. As he came, he sometimes turned to fight a goblin which was following him. Through the village he ran, weaving through the large crowd that attended the evening market. There he arrived at his house and flung the door wide open. In he came as fast as a falcon. He dropped his sword and jumped onto his chair, waiting for his food. The table was only laid for 2 people, Luxon and his mother. Luxon's father had been a hunter, a good one and needed by the village. One day the hunter was hunted. He was stalked by a hungry pack of bloodscales and was killed. But Luxon's mother had not told him what had become of his father. "Where were you?" asked the mother as they ate. "I was fighting dragons and saving people with Reveldin." His mother then put on an angered tone. "How many times must I tell you not to play with that strange boy?" she scolded. "But he's not strange, he's my friend." Reveldin Lockwood was Luxon's one and only friend. Reveldin was the same age as Luxon, but Reveldin was not the most normal of children. When he was born, several things took fire, like paper or flowers. I'm going to stop there because I'm already bored. But you can see that I start trying to pack in a lot more exposition. I try to info dump, and I start trying to play with language techniques. Fast as a falcon, as atrocious as that might be. I was starting to experiment with language. So similar style, but a little bit more information, and really trying to set the scene more than just having the bare bones as I was doing when I was much younger. I actually realizing, looking back through how many times I've written the opening, I've lost count. So I'm going to read another one where I started to set the scene rather than just throw you into the story. In the light of morning, a mist crept beneath the woods of the grey forest that stood at the edge of the small farming town named Durl, and from those woods came the rumble of hooves and the whining of wheels. "Wake up, you lazy blighter!" Okay, yeah, I wrote it in vernacular, so I'm gonna do a weird Irish accent. "Wake up, you lazy blighter!" were the words that awoke Luxon from his sleep. A kick to his coarse straw bed was the prelude of an early and aggressive morning. "You won't guess who's just arrived in town!" The shutters were flung open, and in poured the frigid morning air. "Mom, I'm sleeping! What's got into you, eh?" Luxon cried, pulling the covers higher over to keep himself warm. "It's the carnival, me love!" "And you know what that means, eh?" She kissed him on the forehead. "Now up here with you, smelly weasel!" She kicked his bed one last time, and left the room to go clatter in the kitchen. He got up and slipped on his morning breeches and stretched his dappled wings. Yeah, at one point, my races were all sort of animal-based, so he has wings. "I want you washing up today, me beautiful boy. I feel something good about this one. But also, we don't have to plough our bleeding backs out all day." She began to hum snippets of songs. "Shame your old man can't be here to take me in his arms and spin me around till morning." She ruffled Luxon's messy black hair and gave the boy his oats, and he sat by the fire. "Mum," he said between mouthfuls, "you know them carnivals be bringing but trouble. Why do you like 'em so much? Don't you know they're rubbish? Yeah, I really want to be out in the sun and the baking soil. Lord Belgar's kind enough to let us alone for a day when them merchants come this way. Come on, smile for me, poppet." She tousled his hair. "Please be a good son and behave yourself, okay?" she said, washing her white wings. He went to the window to see the entire caravan of soldiers, merchants, and travellers coming along the path from the woods. Their horses and beasts drew carts, carriages, and wagons, with some wares showing. Anyway, so again, you can see I really wanted to open it with this sort of this really rural, sort of very cottage vibe feel. I made their accents. I wrote, your as Y-E-R, like your, and year for you. Kind of messy, not a lot of people like that, so I changed that. Here's another version. You'll hear similar phrases, but again, it's a different feel to some extent. Wisps of smoke crept from chimneys, perched atop tightly thatched roofs that huddled in an icy dell. Icy mist tumbled from a nearby wood that stood overlooking the village in the dell. Peasants left their homes. No fires burnt in the black morning air, except held by glimmering mounted guards. "Mornin'," a gruff man cried to the faceless guard. Roadways branched up the slope of a mighty hill where a keep stood hidden behind stone walls. Fires burned amid the village there, and feasts were bountiful. Armed and armoured guards watched the roads or sat upon horses whose hooves thumped the earth as they patrolled. The darkness of the morning dawned on Luxon. The sound of his mother clanging the cauldron was a clear sign that she was preparing his oats. His body was stiff from the chill that lingered in the room, despite the number of sleeping animals. His back was still sore from the previous days of labor, and for a moment he wished to lay for one more moment watching his mother make food, hoping she would not notice him for a good while longer. "I know you're awake," she whispered. "Come on, don't be a lazy blighter," she said. "I promise I won't kick your bed this morning." She softly clanged her wooden spoon against the pot. Luxon groaned, and his coarse straw bed pricked him through his nightshirt as he shifted. "Don't be a grump now, me love. Do your poor old mother a favour. Be a good boy, and be up with you." Luxon got up slowly, slipped on his breeches, and stretched his dappled wings and tied on his shirt. "Plough your bleeding back out today, my boy, and I promise I'll cook you up something scrumptious for tea." She got the boy his oats and his wooden spoon, and Luxon sat beside the fire and ate. "You take Bessie up the hill today, you hear? You've done it before." "Yes," he said between mouthfuls. "Don't go getting yourself in any trouble either, mucking about with that friend of yours, yes?" "Yes," he mumbled again as he stared into the fire. "It's the first day of spring, so pray for warmth and shine. Please don't do anything foolish." Luxon finished his food, cleaned his bowl, and fed the animals as his mother tied a rope around the neck of the one great boar. Pulling on their ancient coats, they left and stepped beneath the navy sky. Above them the stars were crisp and sharp. "Take Bessie straight there. Smile for me, Poppet. It'll be a grand day." She smiled and tousled his hair. I really tried to push this one with description. The first line is even difficult to say. It's such a tongue twister that does it work? I don't know. But again, you can see some similar elements, but I tried to sort of pan in, zoom into the scene, and yeah, I wanted to sort of incorporate more of the five senses, the clanging on the cauldron. I loved that idea, him waking up and sort of hearing that. Now, there were times where I rewrote the introduction so many times that I didn't even want it to begin in the town. I thought it might be way easier just to start the story further down the line rather than setting up whatever it is. So this one, they're actually running away from the village already. Cold puffs were released into the midnight air. Only one lonely moon shone a chill of colour. The silent hour was now calling out into the darkness. The air was so bitter with cold, even the kraals shuddered. But the three boys trudged on through the forest. Sadness and fear lingered in their eyes, but only a gleam of excitement glowed faintly. All they were torn, shabby rags. Their sheets were used as capes. They carried bags, light with only little food and water. From time to time, one of them, a boy with grown hair of soft tree brown, looked over his shoulder as though to make sure of no pursuers. Those watching eyes had captured the light of the sky from the edge of the world, a blue so rich and fair. Again he turned his angelic but stern face back to the tracks where he ran. No one knew where they were running to. None knew these woods, or had ever come this far from their homes, but the running continued. It was only after a long while since their departure that one spoke. "We should stop," one said, his eyes as dark as a nightmare's delight. "My legs can't go on like this." So that one was more of a cold opening. I decided that, the opening and the heavy description of where they come from was too slow, very tropey, starting in a village and showing how they lived, and I decided to just try and throw them in. Now I'm going to read you the opening that I have so far, many years later. These ones, I was editing back again when I was probably 18, 20. I keep coming back and then sort of ignoring them, coming back to them and re-editing them. The one that I had the most recently was very similar to the one where he wakes up, hears the mum clanging on the pot, takes the boar, Bessie, up to the Lord's manor to get slaughtered, and it was quite a nice village scene, very pastoral. I wanted to open it with a sort of a light-hearted touch. However, when I think about wanting to write grimdark, this book is meant to be gritty. Again, the conflict of thinking, do I want the opening to be really serene, quite peaceful, maybe little moments of drama or conflict? Is that really setting the scene? I have to put myself in the position of a reader where they might be reading this and go, do I want to read a cozy fantasy? So the most recent one that I wrote, I wanted to set the tone immediately. And again, work in progress. This is definitely not the last draft, but it's more of a direction that I'm leaning in. Hopefully as well, you'll be able to see the difference of my writing, because this is also something that I want to explore with you. It takes years and years of practice, of writing, to try to become comfortable with delivering a scene. And still, I've written for about 30 years. I'm not an expert. I like thinking that I know what to do, but I'm nowhere near some people who write incredibly. So keep at it, keep writing. The clang of a cauldron woke Luxon that morning. His body was stiff from the chill that lingered in the room, despite the animals snoring in their pens. His back was sore from yesterday's labor, and for just a moment he wished to lay in bed, listening to his mother make food. The straw bed pricked him through his nightshirt, and he shifted. "Come on, Luxon, up with you," his mother said softly. "This isn't the day to be laying in bed." Luxon lay still, feigning sleep. "Up, boy. Those fields still need tending, even after the ceremony. Now be good and be up." Luxon groaned and stretched in his bed. "Mother, why can't I stay sleeping a little longer just this once? Flynn, Alala, and Feyrin are still sleeping. Why can't I?" "Flynn and Alala are already up. Feyrin will sleep on forever now." Luxon sat up, rubbing his eyes and looking about the room. There in the corner where his siblings slept, Feyrin lay beneath the meager blanket, his little face pale, his lips blue. Luxon leapt from his bed in his nightshirt and rushed to his tiny brother's side, cupping his cold face in his warm hands. "Wake up, little Feyrin! Wake up now! Mother needs you!" he whispered desperately. "Lux, he can't hear you. Not anymore." When Luxon turned to look at his mother, he watched her continue to stir the cauldron of oats with tears in her eyes. "Come now, boy. Sit and eat. After the priestesses carry little Feyrin into the forest shrine, you must continue to tend those fields like the good boy I know you are." "But, Mother, I promise you I'll cook something special for us tonight. Just promise me you'll do your work. Your father's already out in the field. Will he come to the forest with us?" "No, son. He needs to keep working. Now, come and eat your breakfast," she said, and softly clanged the wooden spoon against the pot. She filled the boy's wooden bowl with hot oats, stuck his wooden spoon into the steaming pile, and handed Luxon his food. Luxon sat beside the fire with his head in his bowl, watching the steam rising like dancing clouds. "Eat, my love. You must eat to be strong. You must be strong for the family. We all must be." Luxon cast his eyes back to the little cot where his infant brother lay, and returned to staring at his food, taking slow spoonfuls of the tasteless warm mush. "I want you to go to the shrine after you've eaten and fetch the priestesses." Luxon nodded. "Promise me that after the ceremony, you'll do me and your father proud by ploughing your little back out today." Luxon mumbled with his mouth full. "Remember, at moonrise the festival of the blue moon begins." Mother sighed. "To pass on the eve of the new year." Luxon finished his oats and stood, wrapping his arms around his silently weeping mother. "Oh, Lux, it isn't fair. First Shael, now Feyrin. Great Thoth protect us." Luxon and his mother held each other for a while as he dried his tears upon her apron. At last she kissed his head. "Go fetch the priestess, my brave boy." So, again, you can hear the elements that echo through each of the versions, but I decided to start it with death. If I'm going to make this book gritty and realistic, losing a baby brother at the beginning of the story sets the tone immediately. But after that, I can have the festival despite the sad circumstances. Now, all of this to say that editing, re-editing and re-editing can be quite bad. I cannot tell you how many times I found myself correcting, editing, going back, changing, throwing away, and, constantly rehashing this opening. It was only much later that someone said, just get the thing done. Forget about editing. Just finish the story and then you can edit. For me, I found that really bizarre. and I wanted to make sure that the opening was as perfect as it could be before continuing, which left me in a constant loop of just never advancing. So I took someone's advice and went, I can change it. And this most recent part I only changed probably about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, which I'm more satisfied with, but obviously it's not perfect. So what I'm trying to say is forget about re-editing and polishing your opening, because turns out by the time you get to the end, you might not even use that. You might start in a different place. You might change everything about it. So the best advice that I've ever been given is just get it down and you can edit it afterwards. There was a saying about you can't edit nothing. And I loved that. So get it down on paper, come back to it later, and then polish it up. Because if you spend too much time just focusing on one thing, you're never going to get anywhere. And that's what I did for, a couple of years or more. If you made it this far to the end of the video, here is a sample of my current work in progress. Revelin stood among the other onlookers, standing about the raised stone slab where a scarred woman lay in shackles. A lantern hung above the table, lighting the squirming woman and the robed figure that stood beside her. This woman's name is Hephaestia. She has been convicted of countless assaults and theft. She's been exiled in 3 lands in Othalim, and has a bounty of 10,000 shards. The woman tried to speak out, but the metallic muzzle stopped her. Today's study will show you the reactions of different chemicals, poisons, and diseases upon the body. The woman writhed once, violently, and then stopped. The hooded man in red robes turned to the shelf behind him and turned back around, holding a vial. First, said the surgeon, we administer 3 drops of leech broth. This potent root is dried, ground, and dissolved into ether in order to release its reactive core. As you will see, he said, drawing a thin tube as he poured into a vial of black liquid and stoppered it with the end of his thumb before removing, will cause the subject's muscles to convulse uncontrollably. Observe. 3 drops slowly formed at the tip of the tube and found their way into the opening of the contraption about the struggling woman's mouth. She grimaced, wincing violently at the tartness upon her tongue before she settled again. As you can see, the surgeon explained as the woman slowly began to twitch and writhe, the subject will begin to lose control of their muscles. The limbs will start to spasm until her entire body is seizing. Soon, if not given the antidote, this woman's heart will stop. He looked down at the woman as she involuntarily shook her bonds. From his pocket he pulled a red liquid that he deftly tipped into the same opening at her mouth. In a few moments her convulsions stopped. This drug, ground from volcanic rock mined from the mountains in Alria, contained rare minerals that counter nerve damage. She will need rest for the next 5 days if she is ever to walk or talk again. A small man carried another vial towards the surgeon, who plucked it from his tray. Tarweed tends to grow by ponds or lakes, and is eaten mainly by rabbits. However, boiled, the chemicals in the leaf have toxic reactions with people's skin. Observe. The new liquid was administered into the non-reactive woman's mouth. Her head lolled when he let go. Watch where the toxic substance descends the gullet. The skin around the neck and chest begin to turn what appear to be black. If you look closely, you will notice that the visible dark black is actually a deep blue. This will most likely cause her to suffer irritations, sores, even gangrene. She would die with a dose this big in about 5 to 10 days. They watched in silence as the still body of the woman changed from a milky white to a glossy black. The next substance is a disease, one that is highly contagious. Please place these masks about your faces and do not move away from the walls. The old man moved about the young students with a pile of pressed masks, showing each how to apply the material about their nose and mouth, checking that each was fastened securely, pushing them back against the wall and whispering a warning to them as he went. This disease, if inhaled, will cause a severe and acute madness to take hold of the victim. 583 years ago, this disease spread through Othalim, cutting it off from the rest of the world. Had the boundaries of our realm not been so strong, our walls so high and our gates impenetrable, there would have been a mass spread into Daron and Dreknor, and potentially beyond. This disease is called brain lime. The subject will first begin to have headaches, followed by vomiting, diarrhea, and then a little while later will begin heavy hallucinations. Again, I warn you all to stand with your backs to the wall and take no step forward. The doors will be sealed in case the virus spreads. Is everyone clear?" The students nervously glanced about each other, wondering if they would dare leave, but no one did. "Seal the doors!" The great stone door slid in place, causing the air of the room to tighten. The same old man arrived at the teacher's side, carrying a locked box, and placed it upon the stone table. With a key, the instructor unlocked the chest, removed the black vial, and stood it up inside a rack. The old man handed the teacher a pair of metal rods, with pincers at the end. Carefully, the man used the rods to open the vial, pour a single drop into a glass, return the stopper to administer the deadly virus. Without changing speed, he replaced all the items within and closed the case at distance, waiting a moment with his instruments held before him. The room waited in silence. Hardly a sound was made as they watched, listening only to the woman's breathing growing more intensely. She began to cough after a time, until her coughing caused a little sick to sputter from her mouth. She groaned and tried to move, but the previous afflictions had truly crippled her. A pungent smell slowly filled the room, and Revelden knew that she had soiled herself. It was a little while after when she began to mutter, Mother, please, the stones taste like worms. Can I please have some of those teeth? Wretches filling into lakes." Her muttering grew louder. "Caves of fear, drown rats, echoing bleeds on toads. Yes! Why? I'm here. Turn around, fiend, turn!" she began whispering. "Eyes on tables, cruel doorways away from far." She began to laugh loudly. "No!" She screamed and fell silent, tugged only once at her violent bonds, and lay still, laughing softly to herself. Daughter, come home, tearing skin from your beautiful face, beautiful face, beautiful face." Tears began to pour from her eyes. "As you can see, she is now in a state of complete insanity. This, unfortunately, is completely incurable. The only remedy is death. Often victims will forget how to eat and will starve to death, though it has been recorded that this madness has driven them at times to eat each other and experience no pain. Without having experienced the previous poisons, she may well have a chance of tearing herself from her bonds, whether through sheer strength or mutilating her own limbs to escape. This madness has been known to cause extreme behavior and feats of impossible strength. Now, on to the final experiment. This last substance is a rare metal only found in the deepest caves of the world. Cored beneath the layers of tarred rock hide slivers of a metal that ignites without anything. Placed in an oil and transported from the infinite caverns, Sunrock was once used by Ifnar and Horror warriors alike in their final moments of desperation and hopelessness in battle. Observe. Using the same tools as before, the surgeon dumped the little vial onto the woman's caged mouth, and the little old man poured water into her mouth with a handled jug. She choked and then swallowed, the animal mind inside her recognizing the need to drink. Once this was done, they stood away. The crowd of scholars and surgeons of the hospital watched as the faint light appeared inside her and slowly grew in intensity. At first it was her clothes that smoldered, sending small flames above the resting body before her skin ignited. In her final moments she screamed, startling a gasp from the students. They watched her writhe and scream until the only remains were her black and charred bones. Thanks for listening. If this is interesting, tell me about your editing process. Are you on your second draft? Are you a writer as well? I will be trying to be putting little excerpts from random parts of my story that I find interesting at the end of my videos. It is grimdark. It's meant to be quite violent and quite morbid, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by, and safe travels.